Well, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this Zenith International webinar, which will cover our next Global Soft Drinks Congress, as well as global beverage market trends. My name is Richard Hall, and I'm the chairman of Zenith International, and I'm joined by our commercial director, Matt Wilton.
Hello, everyone.
Our webinar will last for 20 minutes. We'll take the presentations first, and then open up to questions. And most of you, I think, are pretty familiar with how to offer your questions, and do send them in as they occur to you. So, in terms of the Global Soft Drinks Congress, we're talking about the 11th InnoBev Global Congress. It's on the 17th to the 19th of March in Dubai. It usually attracts about 150 delegates each year from global and regional producers, including many market leaders, with around 40 countries represented. This year we're sponsored by Aptar and Bericap and Closure Systems International, and you can see the full program and online booking details are on the Zenith International website. Previous congresses have been held all over the world. Our aim was to cover 10 big markets and 10 factory visits in 10 years. We've been all over Europe as well as to Russia and the United States. And so now we're on to our 11th year in Dubai. The conference theme is Thirst for Change, and there will be a plant tour hosted by Ojan Coca-Cola, and there are always extensive networking opportunities. The topics we'll cover this year include Middle East and global outlooks, innovation, emerging markets, growth opportunities, funding and branding. We'll have an entrepreneur shootout and a workshop at the end on benchmarks for change. Our speakers range from global leaders like PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. We also have the Chief Executive talking Rain. We've got regional producers from Dabur in India to Nudi in the Antipodes, various other industry representatives and advisors from the United States to Turkey, as well as industry suppliers. Should be a great event. Don't want to spend too long on it. Even greater, we have special offer to webinar attendees. So that's you who are attending, subject to some conditions, but there are some discounts, and we'd love to see you there. So do please book. So that was the introduction. We're now going on to the main ingredient of this webinar, Global Beverage Market Trends with Matt Wilton.
Many thanks, Richard, and hello again, everyone. For the next few minutes, we're going to go through the global beverage market trends and have a look at some of the headline findings over the latest year. I should say that there will, of course, be more data and insights to follow at the event next month, and as Richard said, there are going to be some specific slots on malt beverages, juice, and energy drinks too. But today we'll cover some of the main themes. So what will we see? Well, we'll do a very quick look at Zenith before moving on to look at specific global soft drink segments, some emerging trends and developments, and then just wrap things up with a few final thoughts and conclusions. And as Richard says, if you have questions, please do fire them across to us as we move through the presentation slides. So for those of you who may not be aware of Zenith, I know we've worked with many of you in the past, but we are a consultancy specialising purely in the food and drinks industries, so offering services across all areas, but specific to food and drink. We have a core staff based in Bath, UK, which is where we're head office, as well as a large network of on-the-ground analysts throughout the world, and also have recently opened an office in Dubai, which is, of course, where the event will be. All of our staff are specialists in food and drink, particularly beverages, and also dairy. So that's just a little bit about Zenith. In terms of the information today, I just wanted to bring to your attention globaldrinks.com. This is our one-stop shop source of data for a large number of beverage categories. It's been recently revamped and includes 72 global markets. So covering all the main regions and all the main markets and giving a good holistic view of what's going on in beverages around the world. From the perspective of which segments are included, we cover 24 different beverage sectors. So soft drinks, 15 beverages, 3 within hot, 2 within milk, and then 4 sectors within alcohol. And we track all the main metrics that you would expect. We look at volume, we look at growth, we look at shares, per capita consumption, in other words, how much each individual is drinking per year. And we are also very proud to announce that we've updated the platform. So there's an example, a screenshot to the right of the screen in terms of what output looks like, and ultimately it's a very easy to use, very intuitive data manipulation tool. And it's the source of the information, as I say, that we will now move on to. Excuse me. So this first slide looks at each of the different beverage segments that we track, and it gives an indication of 2 main metrics, really. What kind of growth has been going on in the last full year, and what is the absolute size of the market. And the bubble size represents volume share, so it gives an indication of the actual size of the category. And it shows many things, but just picking out some of the more interesting facts. We've seen the total beverage category grow by 3.4% at an absolute top line level, so it remains a good, healthy, strong growth category as a whole. But within that, we're seeing some individual categories experiencing really quite significant growth. We've pulled out 4 to look at on this slide. Bulk bottled water, this being bottled water in greater than 10 litre pack sizes, if you like. Flavoured functional water, other still drinks which include fruit drinks and energy drinks, for example, and also, sports drinks and fruit drinks. And then energy drinks is another high growth category. So those 4 really kind of excuse me, ahead of the game and ahead of the curve in terms of their growth. Just moving on to have a look at consumption per person. So this looks at litres per person per year and tracks the last 10 or 11 years of data. And we have forecast information as well, although not included in today's deck. And I think there are 3 points really to just pull from this particular slide. The first is the ongoing strength of bottled water. Now this reflects all subsegments of bottled water, so it's small pack, it's bulk, it's still and it's sparkling. And per capita consumption just nudging up towards 55 litres per person per year on average. And you can see, continuing a very strong uptrend. So that's the first main point. The second interesting point is the gap that has been opening up for the last 5 or 6 years, really, versus versus carbonates. And that gap is ever increasing. So people moving more towards bottled water and away from carbonated drinks. And then the final point with this slide is just the growth in still drinks. So we mentioned that still and other still categories are in decent growth. And we're seeing that now as just over 20 litres per person per year. So people moving a little bit more towards the slightly healthier or with some fruit content still beverages. So it's a fairly enduring trend, and again it's something that's a continuation of the last 5 or 6 years of data that we have. So where's the growth coming from? As I said, we include 72 markets, and here we've broken it down at a regional level, just to give a flavour of where globally the growth is coming from. And we're seeing really an ongoing trend borne out again in this year's data that so much of the growth now coming through in the Asia-Pacific market. It's the fastest growing, but also, again, with the size of the bubble indicating absolute size, it's a large market, it's a high growth market, but if you look at the vertical axis, it's still a relatively low per person consumption market. In other words, there's enormous potential for that market to continue growing as more consumers increase their annual consumption. Same story for Africa, although currently a much, much smaller market, but high growth and currently high potential. The flip side, I'm not sure how clearly the North America bubble is coming out on your screens. I hope it's coming out more clearly on yours than it is mine at the moment. But with North America and West Europe, you have good, large, established markets, but really flat from a growth perspective, and quite mature in terms of the levels of consumption. So obviously hugely important markets, but lower potential for incremental category growth. So what are some of the trends behind it? What are we seeing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis? Well, we're seeing innovation continuing to help drive, but also increasingly needing to put the consumer first. Innovation for innovation's sake, possibly less able to rely upon. The importance of personal relevance really links back to the previous point. Functional properties can be seen as added value. And then really, what's behind some of the high growth segments? Well, health and well-being is a key driver for bottled water. Aging population, interest in various different types of functionality, immunity, bone health, helping to support the functional beverages. Energy being driven by people's ever-busy lifestyles. And then perennial drivers really of convenience, search for natural and organic, and also lower calories and less sugar, and more examples of beverages which are aiming to tick those boxes. So just to look quickly at a couple of the categories that we've said are in good growth, we've identified bottled water, we've seen it's in good growth, and globally, even though it's such a huge category, it's still posted 7% volume growth in 2013. Big driver was bulk water, and we know that behind that is the importance of bulk to developing markets where water quality and availability is low, and that continues to be a key trend. And if you'll excuse the little pun at the end, sparkling water, by contrast, is quite flat.
We'll forgive you.
Thank you. I should pause while you all recover from laughing so much and move on to look at flavoured functional. An interesting category, completely different to bottled water in that it's a small and as yet to be fully established market, but it demonstrates that there is that high volume growth potential still out there. So up 10.1% in the last to 2013. But what's really interesting about this category, and I should say it's those products with added functional ingredients and a functional positioning. What's really interesting about this category is when you drill down to look at individual markets, there's really quite big fluctuations. Some markets really going well, others actually starting to decline, even though the products haven't been around for all that long. So just wrapping up with a couple of final thoughts, and then happy to take the questions that have been coming through. We see that beverage markets will continue to rely on innovation to stimulate growth, more so perhaps in developed markets, but increasingly in developing markets. We're seeing the move away from artificial towards natural products, a growth in focus on health and well-being, and the growth of bottled water, for example, really showing how low calorie, low sugar options are important, as are natural sweeteners such as stevia. And then finally, from a processing perspective, we're seeing production methods and packaging enabling companies to really kind of line themselves up with specific consumer trends. Thinking about factors here such as cold press within juice, for example, really giving that consumer reason to believe and helping to drive the category forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Now, I've got a few questions. A few people have asked the perennial question, which is about will we share our slides, and the answer is yes. And I think we're also going to give you a recording if you want to have the recording of the webinar. So we will contact you by email very shortly afterwards to give you a link to content. Do send your questions through. We've got one about somebody wants a bit more information on flavoured sparkling water versus sweet carbonated drinks. Okay, so water versus carbonates.
Okay, so I mean the short answer is we have plenty of data that we could share, obviously kind of after this session. But yeah, we're certainly seeing that the flavoured water category is experiencing generally really good growth. It's in some respects it's an obvious area to switch from carbonates, from full sugar carbonated drinks. It's an obvious area to switch out that particular consumption and switch into flavoured sparkling. It provides a little bit more excitement to the sort of plain water drinking occasion, and certainly we're seeing that as a trend over the last couple of years in particular.
It's a lot of it's about the balance of positives and negatives, and Kevin Klock from Sparkling Ice will be speaking at the Congress in Dubai, highly appropriately, as a very successful flavoured sparkling water. Now, next thing is global trends reflected differently in different regional markets. So are there any really areas that are bucking the trend, Matt, or is it the same worldwide?
I think it's a fabulous question, and as I kind of alluded to, even within a region you can see quite big variation country by country. Probably the best example to draw on is one that we shared a slide on, which is in the flavoured functional space. In Asia Pacific and some of the eastern markets, these are categories in good growth, with a certain amount of heritage behind them. The flip side is in the latest full year in the US, for example, we're seeing decline in flavoured functional. So certainly regionally there is variation. It's very positive that overall, given the variation in markets, there is still that headline growth, which kind of provides that strong platform.
A lot of the directions of change seem to be similar, but so many places are coming from different backgrounds, and so the adjustments are causing big shifts. Next question about impact on government policy, particularly over sugar. So what about government policy and sugar? We are seeing various sort of warning signs about taxation and forcing industry, but industry is changing a lot itself.
Well, yes, and I mean some of the more obvious areas affected obviously are the carbonates, but also we're seeing it in the relevance of the sugar debate when it comes to fruit juice. And what's quite, as Richard said, from an industry response perspective, what's interesting is how are people tackling this potential challenge? And obviously we're seeing greater use of stevia, really kind of making its way into the market now. And also we're seeing people increasingly managing sugar intake through smaller serving sizes. So in the North American market, the 7.5 ounce can is gaining in popularity, and it's a way to still enjoy the beverage, but sort of regulate sugar intake. So that, as Richard said, there are the two dynamics. There's the governmental position and also the industry response.
I think my view is that sugar is getting a particularly bad press at the moment and is not the only answer. And natural sweetening has its own advantages too. And I suspect that the debate has to move on, and even if there were sugar taxes, would it actually shape the behaviour that people are seeking, or is it just prejudice? So there's a big debate around that. What about opportunities for innovation? Packaging, branding, new taste ingredients, existing products with new taste. There's a lot of tweaking. Is there any fundamental change going on?
It's a really good question, and I feel duty-bound to say that we have a series of innovation reports which may well answer that question. However, to kind of headline it, I think, it is a little bit about tweaking, but some of the tweaking is in potentially really, really significant areas. So back to the sugar debate and back to the use of stevia, technically it's a tweak to a product formulation, but actually the potential change that could bring is enormous.
It's also the case, I think, with packaging and with messaging. There are lots and lots of ways of presenting things as well as innovating on taste and ingredients. We are actually now out of time, so to those of you that feel you must go, we must let you go, and we must say thank you for attending. Do come to our Congress, and we will be getting in touch with you with a view to giving you the slides and following up. And if you've got other questions, just keep them coming through, and we'll try and answer you personally. So goodbye from Matt.
Yes, goodbye everyone.
And goodbye from me.